So now we're going to talk about triggers, and triggers are kind of like functions in the sense that it's a custom automation that's going to execute a custom script, so a low-code automation. But the difference is that triggers are always dependent on events inside Jestor. So when I create a record, when I update a record, when I delete a record, so when you have an automation that's entirely event dependent, that's what we call triggers here. So what we're going to create right now, we have this checkbox for run automation, and all I'm going to do here is that when I click on this run automation, I'm going to create a new record, right? So again, quite simple, just for learning purposes. It could be a lot more complex than that. So let's go to the low-code area. I'm already in triggers, so I'm going to create a new trigger. I'm going to call create a new record, and I'm going to select the table that I'm at, and for the programming language I'm going to use Python. Again, we have Python, .NET, PHP. We're going to go with Python because it's the most commonly used for automations here. So like I said, you have to define the conditions that are going to run this trigger. So in this case, clicking on a checkbox field is going to be updating the record, right? So I'm going to have to select one of those, right? So like I said, there's three conditions when a record is created, updated, and deleted. But we will also break this down with before a record is created and after a record is created, for example. There are a few differences. It's all in our documentation. But for example, before a record is created, you don't have its ID because it's not in the database yet. And after a record is created, you have the ID. So there are a couple of differences. It's important to read everything to see. And also we have to define if it's sync or async. And the difference is async, it's an automation that's going to run in parallel, like independent of the user. They're going to click on the checkbox and they can forget about the automation. And async automation, it's going to run like the user is going to have to wait for the automation to run entirely, right? So they have to wait for the automation to finish executing. So again, there are a couple of differences here. If a low-code trigger is sync, you can do something like, depending on certain conditions, stop the automation and show an error message. So a few differences to keep in mind. So we're going to go with async here. So let's see, and after a record is updated, I'm going to click on save, and then I can start creating the code. So what I'm going to do here is, if I click on this, it's going to create a new automation. And one important thing to keep in mind is that I have to check if this checkbox goes from false, unchecked, to true, which is checked. And here in the documentation, you can see all the variables. So what we're going to do here is, if before I click on the checkbox, and the checkbox field is this one, if it was false, and after I click on the checkbox, it goes to true, then I'm going to execute something, and this something, it's going to be creating a new record, right? So I'm just going to copy paste this, and it's going to create a record in this table. Here I'm getting the ID, and I'm going to create the record with the name new record, and I'm going to click on save. You could go through all your versions here. So let's see if it works. Let's go back here. Let's click on run automation. So it's async, it's in parallel. I don't have to wait, but it already reflects here. So it has already executed. So there you go. That's how you create a trigger. It could be a lot more complex, but this is just to give a vague idea of how you start this, right?